Steve Kemp with the People Not Titles podcast, and I'm so pleased today to have my good friend and the designated managing broker of the Lincoln Park, Baird and Warner office, David Bailey. David, thanks for being on our podcast, and I'm so excited to have you here.
No, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Dave, what got me kind of spurred, even though I've had you on my mind for a while in terms of this podcast because of your journey and your story, is taking a look at the blog post that you had that talked about the things I wish I knew, and it just reminded me of your journey, your experience, and how unique it is in many ways for rising from your humble beginnings to now really managing one of the premier offices in the city. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you were the top managing broker in Chicago agent. Was that?
Yeah, so we were a finalist for the award. So,
okay, finalist for the award. Okay, fantastic.
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. So anyway, so Dave, let's just talk about you. As we were talking before we started recording, I didn't know that your dad was in real estate.
Yeah.
And is that part of the seed that sprouted in you?
Yeah, so it is absolutely part of the story. It's really interesting because growing up in a real estate household, I have two fantastic sisters, and we would all joke around that there is no way any of us are ever going to get into real estate. Now, fast forward here, 20, 30 years later, and of my two sisters, two of us are in real estate, only one of us escaped. But it's, I say that obviously tongue in cheek because I'm very thankful that I was exposed to it at such a young age.
You saw the hustle, you saw the grind,
you saw the hustle, yeah. And that's, and I think it's just an awareness of what real estate is, and specifically residential real estate can be.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes the picture that is painted is driven almost entirely, especially nowadays, by whatever we see on reality TV, or we might know somebody that's in residential real estate part-time, but that's not really the whole story of what it's like to run a true residential real estate business. So growing up, my father started off in the sales side of things.
So he had the big book of listings.
He had the big book of listings. Yeah, he started there, and he has a really interesting story. All from he stumbled into real estate a little bit accidentally as well, driven kind of by I think the birth of his kids that drove him to try something else. But you look at residential real estate and the different paths to success, and he started in the sales side of things, but ultimately knew he was driven by helping others succeed. So he was given an opportunity to manage an office in his 30s. And he really took advantage of that opportunity, built relationships, and continued to grow and develop, and was working for Merrill Lynch, which was in the residential real estate space at the time.
Yes.
Helped them grow and develop in the Northeast of the United States, and eventually was given an opportunity by a bank in New York to launch his own residential brokerage in Connecticut. And so as a kid, when I was kind of in middle school and high school years, kind of to your point, my life on weekends and evenings, I'd go with my sisters and we'd go play around in the different offices. So copy machines, office supplies, giant listing books. We were exposed to that at a very young age as to what residential real estate was. I remember going to holiday parties for some of his brokers and getting to know their kids. It was just always in our blood.
Wow, that's great.
It was a blast.
So it makes me think that when even though you have your unique story, when people get you, they get multi-generations of kind of this experience of real estate and seeing salespeople succeed and fail, and watching your dad lead a group. So it's really interesting. I know that about you.
It is, and I have very clear memories. I played a lot of ice hockey growing up, and we would take long road trips to tournaments and games, and we'd be in the car all of the time in that big brick kind of attached to the side of the car.
Yep.
And hours and hours of listening to my father on the phone, talking to brokers, other managers,
dealing with issues, problems, sales things. Wow.
So just the whole problem-solving approach that I was privileged to hear, really both sides of a conversation, but also see the opportunity, right? I think. And one of my frustrations with our industry is if people were aware of how fantastic of a professional career this could be, just from a day-to-day perspective and the people that we help and personal growth and personal challenge and all that, if more people were aware of what it was truly like to build a residential real estate business, I think we would have a lot more interest in this as a profession. But I think oftentimes people fall back into this as either a second or third career after they've tried something else. I think I was lucky enough. I did have another professional career for a short period of time, but I was lucky enough to know about this at a very young age.
So Dave, you saw a lot, and seeing a lot has you either saying no to it or yes to it, right? Yeah. And why'd you say yes to it? What did you see that you thought was a fit for you?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because I think when you have the ability to observe to that level and to be surrounded, it can go one of two ways, right? Either it's a hard no, I'm not going to do this, or it's a wow, that's really interesting. And I don't think I really appreciated that knowledge I was receiving until I was maybe or later on in my life. But I think a couple of things stand out to me. One, I was very lucky to grow up in a household where my parents were around. I know my father was, at times he was commuting 2.5 hours each way places. But he was always there. He would make it home. He would make it to my games. He'd make it to school events, whatever it may be. They were present.
Yeah.
That was something. But I think the thing that stood out to me more than anything was just the impact I would see that he would have on so many people's lives. The holiday parties I mentioned, it's very timely, of course, as we're recording this right around the holiday time. We would go to these places, and the number of people that would come up to me as one of his children and just say, I can't tell you how thankful I am for everything your father has done for us, whatever that may be. And I think that awareness, that stuck with me over time, and just the idea of, giving back. And you don't do it for the recognition or the acknowledgement. You just do it because it's the right thing to do.
And so you mentioned your the career before real estate. So you felt still that you were like, okay, I know that real estate is something that's there. I have the experience and all that. I'm going to try something on my own. So what was that like? And then what was that like transitioning from then to saying, okay, actually real estate, this is not like real estate. This is not what I experienced with my dad, and I want some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I finished school, met my now wife, Beth, at school at UW-Madison. She was in the process of applying to law schools. I went back home to the Northeast just to kind of figure out what we wanted to do in terms of next steps. And I was trying to convince her to apply to schools in Boston. She wanted to stay in Chicago. And of course, we're here in Chicago.
And Beth is from Chicago.
Beth is from Chicago, absolutely.
Okay.
So I would say it was a battle of Northeast versus Midwest. I use that term battle very loosely. But and I am so thankful that I ended up here in Chicago. But I had that 1 year to kind of do some reflection and think about what I wanted to do. And to my parents' credit, they didn't push me one way or another. And I think as somebody in your early 20s, you have to do some reflection and decide what's best for you. And it has to be your choice if you're given the opportunity to make that happen. I was working a few different jobs in warehouses and things of that nature just to accumulate enough money for to move myself out here. But I was given an opportunity in a corporate sales job. And I worked for Earthlink, the internet company. And I don't know if you remember Earthlink.
Absolutely.
It was back in the days where you would walk into a Best Buy or a Costco or Office Max, Office Depot, and there would be Earthlink, Net Zero, AOL, all of these different CDs that you had for a choice of an internet service provider. And the model was you would rely on the sales staff in the store to encourage customers that are buying computers to choose one of those CDs. And so my role with Earthlink, because they were launching a national sales division, was to go into all of those brick and mortars. My territory was basically the Midwest. And again, as somebody new to the Midwest, it was great because I didn't know anything about it, so it got me the chance to really explore and get to know different areas of Chicago. I would go into those stores and I would build relationships. I would, you're working at that store, I would introduce myself, I would say hello, I would talk to you about your background, and then start to find the opportunity to educate you on why Earthlink would be a better choice for your customers versus AOL or Net Zero or whatever it may be. And it was great. I actually found out a couple of things about myself. One, I really enjoy the chance to connect with new people. I like the challenge of building relationships. I like asking fantastic questions and listening to the response and really trying to figure out what drives somebody to make a certain choice. And remember, when you're going into these retail stores, you're often dealing with kids that are 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. In the turnover of those stores is very high too. So almost every single time I would go somewhere, you'd be meeting somebody
new person,
and that's okay. But I love that. But one thing I found I didn't love is I was paid a salary, and my salary was my salary. And whether I hit 200% of my goal or 40% of my goal, my salary was my salary. And that to me was somewhat limiting. It definitely did not motivate me. Felt like I was really going above and beyond and growing some new relationships and helping the business out. But it clearly opened my eyes to other opportunities.
That right there, what you said is to me, dealing with a lot of different salespeople. That seems to be a distinction between whether you feel like it's a fit for corporate or salaried work with a little bonus and all that, or if you feel like, hey, I want to know what I need to do to get here, and I'm willing to put myself on the line, maybe take less to get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's very valid. That the whole concept of you want to place the bet on yourself. And my life was a simple life at that point in time.
Yeah.
Right? We had a modest apartment here in Chicago.
Sure.
We had
it
no
wasn't
kids.
huge risk.
Yeah,
you didn't have four kids at home that you had to feed and blah,
correct.
blah, blah.
My risk factor was very nominal. So
it was a good time to pursue that.
It was a great time. So I remember the phone call very vividly. I called my father and I said, all right, so I'm thinking about making the switch. I'm going to take my licensing class, and when I come home for the holidays, I want to chat with you about what this could look like. Because again, I was around it always, but he never said, real estate is something you should consider. He was always kind of
Was he? Do you think he was of the camp that, like, some parents are like, I'm going to do this so my kids don't have to? Was your dad in the camp of, I think, this is a great life and I want my kids to have it?
I think deep down inside, he absolutely feels that way, and he is so passionate about real estate and residential real estate as a career for so many different reasons. But he really, again, to his credit, he was not one that said, this is what you have to do and this is how it's going to have to be. He believed in that process of self-discovery. And
he probably knew that if you didn't choose it for yourself, you probably weren't going to make it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a very
You
valid
just
point.
can't force a guy or a girl into sales.
Yeah.
And that it's a tough road if you don't have the heart for it.
Correct. I think that's exactly right. So, so I ended up taking the test in the summer of 2004, and
so he said you have your conversation with your dad, and does your dad encourage you? Does he give you the reasons why not to do it? Is he balanced? What is he like?
Yeah, he's more balanced. So I would ask the questions, and he would say, "Well, tell me what questions you would have." And so I would say, well, what do you how do real estate brokers make money? So I had a general understanding, but I wanted what makes a successful real estate broker? How do new brokers get their business? Honestly, a lot of questions people come to me and ask me all the time right now. But then I also had deeper questions, and he brought some more out of me in terms of, how do you pick the right brokerage? How do you find a partnership that really develops, that helps to make sure I'm in the right situation to develop my business? How do you stand out from other new brokers in the crowd? Any tips and tricks you could recommend, things like that. So I went in honestly very lucky that I had that sounding board and I could ask really any question I want. And that's honestly one of my biggest frustrations with our industry right now is I think as a new to the business broker, there's a lot of information that's out there, and it's hard to wade through what's relevant and what's not relevant. And so having a father that is in that world, I was able to get answers that I understood and trusted.
You trusted, that's the key. You knew he had your best interests at heart.
Always, without a doubt, right?
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And his number one piece of advice, and he said this, and again, I remember this very vividly. He said, surround yourself with people that you trust and trust your instincts. So he said, you're in Chicago. There's fantastic brokerages that are out there. But surround yourself with people that you trust. Make sure that you're going to have ongoing support, not just from a corporate level, but when you show up at that office every day, make sure that you have that ongoing support. And then the last thing is just keep showing up. And so those things really stood out to me, and I feel very lucky that I landed with Baird and Warner. And
was Baird and Warner your first pick?
So Baird and Warner. So kind of looping back around, my father launched his company and was independently owned and operated, and so he was not a franchise, and so independent was important to me. I think again, some awareness on that side of it, just understanding the different models, I think was beneficial too. But independently owned and operated, and I liked the fact that Steve Baird is a real guy. He's visible, he's present, he's a true leader in the company. So I did interview all over the place. I talked to 4 or 5 different places.
Yeah, and he's not distracted from a standpoint of this isn't one of his businesses this is his business.
This is his business. 100% his business.
Yeah.
And I interviewed around, and I have a very vivid memory. I interviewed with a gentleman named Brian Heilig, and Brian ironically enough, is also from a real estate family. His father, Steve, is still a broker with Baird and Warner. And I don't know how many years it's been, decades for sure. But I interviewed with Brian, and it just clicked. And he asked me questions, what do you want long term?
And that was in Evanston?
So that was actually, we had an office in, we called it our City West office, which was at Halstead Grand in Milwaukee.
Okay.
So it was a smaller office, which actually, at that point in time for me was perfect. And he was just a high energy guy, but he asked me about my vision for the future. And I asked this question of everybody I chat with now. And I said to Brian at that time, I said, listen, I want to build a very successful sales career, but my goal is to eventually manage an office for Baird Warner. And I have gotten that answer one other time from somebody I've interviewed, and they are now a manager for Baird Warner here too.
Wow.
So it's it was just, it felt like the perfect fit, relationship-driven company, ongoing office level support. It was meaningful to me, and it stood out to me as the right choice.
Okay, so that was 2004. And so how long were you an agent, Dave?
So I was an agent from 2004 until 2008, but then I was in a hybrid role as kind of an agent and an assistant manager from 2008 to 2011. So I really sold real estate actively with buyers and sellers from 2004 to 2011.
Okay, and that was, you entered into a really good time and then it turned sour. So was there ever a time early in your sales career that were you determined, like, I never thought of quitting, or did you think of quitting? And what was that like? How quickly into it was it? And how did you come out of that?
Yeah, real estate is something, and especially launching any business, I imagine this to be true, but you can't get too high and you can't get too low. And I've always been that fairly mild-mannered,
not too
strong
emotional
listener. Not that I don't get emotional about certain things. Maybe like when the Blackhawks aren't doing great, or my Wisconsin
yesterday,
Badgers.
I was like, are they at the bottom of the
I
league?
know.
It's brutal.
No, not that, but I do think kind of an even keel is really important in what you're doing too. But I remember starting, and I was super excited about getting my license, and you start doing all the activities. I was following all the programs, following all the plans. But it was probably 4 or 5 months in. I was working with a lot of people. But remember, I had zero network here in Chicago. So every relationship I had to develop from day one with potential clients. I still had not had a sale 4 or 5 months in. And I remember meeting with actually one of my colleagues. So Brian, my manager, set me up with one of our colleagues. His name is Jerry Riccardotti, fantastic guy. And Jerry and I sat down in a conference room, and Jerry said, hey, listen, you were doing all of the right things. You need to believe that this is going to work, and you need to keep doing the right things, because all of these activities will eventually lead to the result that you're looking for.
Wow.
I can see you getting frustrated. Don't get frustrated. Keep working.
That had to be life-giving at that time.
100%, right? I mean, here you are kind of, I kept showing up. That from my father, keep showing up. But that really stuck with me. And fast forward about 30 days after that, I was averaging a sale a week for about 8 weeks in a row.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
That was so in terms of levels of frustration and that roller coaster of what it's like, and I talk to my team all the time now, you just have to control what you can control. You continue to do the activities and serve the people that you need to serve, and the results will come.
Yeah.
And again, that point in time in my life, it was a very simple life. But it didn't mean that there wasn't stress that came with it too.
Yeah, and I'm a believer, having done sales just like that, Dave, that as a salesperson, you kind of quit at the end of every day and then you restart again. It's kind of a normal thing where people think it had to be different for Dave, or it had to be different. So 5 months in, you didn't make a sale, and all of a sudden it starts to pop. You never know when the seeds are going to take, right?
Yes. That's exactly right. In just believing, right? You surround yourself with good people, and that gets back to choosing the right office.
Yeah.
I surrounded myself with good people.
Yeah.
That I was not a number in that office. People knew me. They knew my background. They got to know me personally. And then they could identify when I was feeling some moments of frustration or pain, and then help bring me up. And I think that's crucial, especially in residential real estate. You can feel like you're on an island as you're launching your business. But the reality is, everybody around you has gone through a version of what you're going through, if they're aware of what you're going through at that point in time.
So Dave, then your career journey took you from individual contributor to being a person that's going to take a step in leadership. And part of that process, or that decision process, there's something you give up by stepping away from being an agent. The autonomy, the maybe potential upside of it, and those kind of things. for leadership. What was that process like of you kind of sorting out, kind of knowing yourself well enough to say, this is an itch I want to scratch?
Yeah, and that's what I found over time is that I was spending more and more time not only just working on my business, but supporting peers in the office. And while, of course, I love personal success and financial success, I was finding more satisfaction from helping others and then seeing them succeed as well.
That's awesome.
And I've always kind of had that coaching mentorship side in me, and that just brought it more to the front and center. And so, as you weigh those two things out, and you're exactly right, to shift from the broker model over into the management model, it's very different. You are giving up a little bit of that autonomy, but at the same time, you're working a lot no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so maybe the hours are slightly different, but really they're not even that different.
Yeah.
I was just driven by the next challenge. I was driven by the ability to build something else. And again, to Steve Baird's credit, he gives his managing brokers a lot of autonomy to build. And I like that idea of building and growing and developing, and not just from a broker level, but from a brokerage level. And so an opportunity came up. And I was pretty young for the opportunity in terms of years, comparatively to my peers and even industry wide. And that's where I really do credit Laura Ellis for believing in my abilities to go into an office and have an impact. And that's had the opportunity to manage our Evanston office.
Yeah, and it's pretty common in real estate to I would say that the real estate business is very friendly to people as they age. In other words, you could be 80 years old and still be contributing and alive and going in real estate. And so to have a young person come in who is probably managing 80% of the people that are older than you now, what was that like, or how did you what were the things that helped you succeed in that environment?
Yeah, and at that point in time, you're absolutely still figuring yourself out too,
yes.
Right? It's first time where you're in theory at the helm and in charge of the ship. And very vivid memory of the day of the announcement. And it's a fantastic office. I love that Evanston office. And day of the announcement, we're out there in front of everybody, and you're telling the team, okay, here's your new manager. And you have this kid coming up from the city to manage the Evanston office. And they have Chris Smith is a fantastic guy. He was the managing broker at the time. They were going to move him to a different office. And there's people crying. And there's people looking at me like, who is this guy that's coming in here? There was a broker in that office who came up to me, and again, very clear, I remember this, I remember where I was standing when this happened. She said to me, welcome, but just so you know, I don't need a manager, and make sure you stay out of my way. And, so there's all of those things, and, heads kind of spinning. But then you take a step back, you digest all of that, and, you just believe in your ability to continuously learn and continuously add value. I think every manager goes through a different version of that growth and development process, and honestly, you go through it all of the time.
Yeah,
I'm going through it right now.
Yeah,
but I remember taking a step back and thinking, okay, get in there, show up on the first day, put a smile on, and figure out ways to build relationships with every person in that office, and add value to their business. You help them sell more real estate. You help add value to their business. You are going to earn their trust and earn their respect, and you're going to grow and develop that office. And so that's what I did. I started on day one and made sure I met with every individual broker. I made sure I was paying attention, asking fantastic questions to get to know them, not only from a business perspective, but from a personal level as well. And that to me, oftentimes managers will come in and they will say, okay, I'm here to solve all your problems. And you become the problem solver for everybody. And I did that for probably 2-3 months before I realized I might start losing all my hair.
Right.
All my grades were starting to come in.
Yeah.
And
the problems never end.
The problems never end.
Yeah.
Right. So that's part of your growth and development. But then you teach people to solve their own problems. You ask better questions. You go down that path. So it was a great opportunity. And again, that office is just such an impressive office, and allowed me the opportunity to really learn more about my leadership style and what it takes to be successful running a real estate office.
So Dave, it makes me think that you were part of, before 2008, you saw this kind of market decline and this tightening, and you were an agent during that period of time, so you dealt with it. Now we're going through, I don't know if it's the same thing, but there's similar emotions, to it. I was part of the real estate industry in that time too, and there's certain elements of what we're going through now that, are unsettling to new agents who maybe aren't as seasoned. How are you able to guide people through it right now? What are some of the key things that people can do to stay in the game?
Yeah, I think anytime there's change, especially in a marketplace, people get more cautious, right?
Yep.
They're concerned about what's happening, what's shifting, what is the next year going to look like. And if I was to rewind and think back to every December over the last 5-10 years, and I forecast what was going to happen in the year going forward, I'm probably wrong 90% of the time, right?
Yeah.
And so you always think about those things. What do you control and what don't you control?
Love it.
And to me, mindset is the thing that's probably most important right now. And when I was in sales, my mindset going into the fourth quarter was always opportunity. When people retract, I would jump in and do more. And I was just this morning having a conversation with some brokers who were hosting open houses over Thanksgiving weekend. Built a lot of relationships, got clients because guess what? Nobody else was hosting open houses. And anybody that was out there looking, they were able to secure those clients. And so as you enter a market shift, I think about mindset and I think about those things that you can control. And so it's activities.
Is that a baby?
Routine. That is baby crying. I don't know if everybody else is going to hear that.
That's great, yeah.
I don't even know what,
That's
this
all
is
right.
not a daycare that we're filming in, I promise. But you control those activities and you control that routine and those habits every single day. And so my message to my team right now is, listen, I don't care what the articles say. I know what we can look at from a day-to-day basis on a data perspective. And I know that we are in Chicagoland. And I know that we are lucky enough to have the opportunity to support clients that are looking to buy or sell or invest in real estate here in Chicago. And guess what? We're going to have a great year next year.
Yeah.
There's going to be opportunity. And if you fall victim to that scarcity mindset of less opportunity, then you're going to have less opportunity. But if you're out there hustling and trying to build relationships and educating yourself on where those opportunities are going to be, then there's a chance to take market share from other people.
That's awesome.
And
I love it.
My brokers know this. That is and I will absolutely butcher this quote, but it's also that Warren Buffett philosophy, right? When everybody is greedy, you're more cautious. When everybody is more cautious, I'm going to be more greedy. And so I am absolutely going to be hustling after more market share during this period of time because I'm not afraid. I know this will work out. I know this will be fine, and my team will believe that as well.
That's awesome. So Dave, I've seen your office grow. So I think we met in 2014, and I've seen your office grow. We're sitting in this beautiful new Lincoln Park office. Been a couple years here, or 3?
3 years in this location.
Actually, 3 years in this location, which is amazing. Yeah. And I think your agent list reads like a who's who of Chicago real estate, which is really a tribute to you and all the. I think about what you talked about with your dad and how you had these agents that were telling you what your dad has meant to them. And I've had so many conversations with agents on your team that have said the same thing about you. And I just think, wow, my dad used to say the apple doesn't fall far from the horse. And
I love it.
and I see that so I'm sure your dad is proud and you're taking it even to new levels of. But what's interesting is there's a common thread. There's nothing new necessarily in the sense of the integrity, the surrounding yourself with good people, the making right choices, the daily habits, showing up, mindset. But what's the next mountain for Dave Bailey and for Baird and Warner, this Lincoln Park office?
Yeah, and I love that. It's always evolving. But I've been here in Lincoln Park since 2014. So that was my first year managing this office. And this office, again, always been a great office. We probably had about 80, 90 brokers. We're writing about 400-ish million in volume on an annualized basis. And I remember sitting down with Laura Ellis and Jennifer Warden, and I had written, when I was in the process of kind of interviewing for this position, I had written kind of a plan of what my goals would be for this office if I was given the opportunity. And, at the very top, I wrote the words $1 billion. And goal. So, and mind you, I did know exactly what this office was doing, but I also see opportunity. And I've spoken to Bill Gill about this many times, and Bill, who manages our Naperville office, and he has successfully reached that $1 billion goal, and he motivates me to keep on getting better every single day. But I want to get this office to $1 billion. We were very close last year. Very close. We got to $950 million in written volume. So we were very close. But I also want to do it from a quality perspective, and there's two different identities there. It's not my goal to hire every broker off the street and get to that $1 billion goal by having 500 brokers in this office that are not very productive. I'm very protective of our brand, and I want to know when somebody's getting an offer or being represented by a Baird Warner broker that they're receiving the absolute highest level of service. And so I want to do it by having the highest per agent productivity in the marketplace, and having brokers that this is their full-time career. They are professionals, and we are helping each other grow and learn and support. So that is still the big goal. Now the $1 billion was close, but it wasn't quite there. And we're going to be knocking on the door again this year, but not quite there again. So that's the next one. But I think not far behind that is probably the $2 billion. So that's where we would like to go.
And all with at the heart of it, agent productivity. And Dave, I've seen you interview agents, and I think I don't want to say you scare more away from a standpoint of that you really are intentional and careful about making sure people make the right choice, and making sure that you're making the right choice of people who you want to build into, because you have a finite amount of energy, but you're really pouring it into your people. And so talk about your process about really just when you meet an agent, how does it go from meeting them to actually becoming a part of your team?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you referenced the things I wish I had known before I started in real estate blog. One of everybody's got versions of COVID projects, right? So one of our COVID projects was to just kind of demystify the process from a new to the business broker perspective. So if you think about it, somebody decides they want to get the real estate license. They're excited, fantastic. They're either going to shift careers, whatever the background is, they decide to get the real estate license. And the second they pass that exam, they are inundated, because they go on a list, a passing roster list. So they are inundated with phone calls, mailings, postcards, whatever, from
offers,
all different brokerages with all different business models that are saying, come work here, come work here, come work here. Now, we have to be a part of that process as well, because I want the at-bat. But my first interaction is always a quick 15-minute pre-qualifying phone call. There's a couple of things I want to find out. And it's really honestly very simple. Are you full-time or are you part-time? I understand that it can be tough to transition into real estate in a full-time capacity, and I wish we could kind of wave that magic wand and say all of your bills are going to stop while you launch a new career. Unfortunately, that's not how this works. So while I don't have a hard, I won't work with you on a transition plan, that transition plan has to be fairly protracted. Yeah. So sometimes people can transition over a 30, 60-day period. But number one, are you full-time or are you part-time?
And why is that, Dave? I have a feeling the heart behind that is, if you take too long, you'll never do it.
You'll never do it, right? You'll never build the momentum. So part-time hours.
Trying to taxi around the runway, if you're there for 5 hours, you're never going to take off because you're just going too slow.
That's exactly right. Part-time hours, part-time results, part-time compensation.
There you go.
And so you never believe that this can be a full-time career, and you've lost out on the most exciting part. And so that's always one of my questions, is making sure people understand what that looks like.
Yeah.
The second thing is, why? Why real estate? You have all of these choices, and
because I want to make a lot of money. That doesn't seem like that's the right answer.
And also, I'll say this: I don't mind that answer as long as it comes with something else about service, learning, development, whatever it may be. Because it still has to be about the people. This is a relationship business, and if you don't enjoy interacting with people, or if you don't have the curiosity to want to learn and develop a new skill set, and you just want to fast forward immediately to Boardwalk and start counting the money, then it's probably not the right career for you either. So I try and understand their why, and if the why is somewhere in line with what it could be, and again, sometimes they lack the awareness to even understand what the why is, then I'll say, okay, come on in for an interview. And we have a 2-step interview process, which I could argue 3-step with the pre-qualifying call. Most brokerages will say, come in, we'll talk to you, we'll give you an offer, and we hope you sign up right then and there. They come in and they talk to me first, which is also a little bit backwards versus talking to one of my assistant managers or staff here. And I talk to them first because I want to better understand what makes them tick. I love the opportunity to coach, train, and support new brokers and help them launch their business. But I want to understand a little bit more about their background. So I'll spend some time chatting with them. I'll give them the floor to ask any question they want. And part of that also is because I was given that opportunity to really ask any question of my father when I was getting started. And I know how confusing it can be sitting in that chair. So I keep it very casual, and I say, listen, you can ask me about the market, you can ask me about earnings, you can ask me about prospecting, lead development, whatever you want to ask me about, I want you to do it. And really give them the floor and make sure that they understand what they're walking into. And let's say after that conversation, we think it's a good fit. I will say to them, listen, I want you to go out and talk to some other competitors. And talk to the other competitors. And if you think that based on our conversation we could be a fit, then I'm going to introduce you to my assistant managers. And then you're going to chat with them and see if it's a good mutual fit on that front as well. So we have a very clear process to follow. And if somebody goes through that whole process and we are all on the same page, then I'm pretty confident that they are a good fit for our program. And I do that for all sorts of reasons. But one, I am lucky to be surrounded by such a fantastic team, and I really need to respect their time, because if we are going to take somebody on and make that commitment to help them grow a business, then I expect that same commitment in return. And if they are not going to give us that commitment, then I'm now asking my staff to spend hours of their day with somebody who's not sharing that same level of commitment.
I love the way you value yourself, your brand, and the people on your team, Dave. And having seen you from 2014 here, the numbers of agents that have gone from sitting in the chair to success, the proof is in the pudding, right? And you can name person after person that has never started in real estate, came to you, started, and has been successful. It makes me think of one other thing is what is your team? How do what does your team look like, and what went behind the decision to have them be a part of the team, your leadership team here in the office?
Yeah, so again, credit to Steve and Steve Baird and Laura Ellis for understanding that as we continue to scale up the office, I will never compromise on client experience. And I would say the same thing to my brokers as they are building their business. The second you start to feel like you're compromising on client experience, for our brokers, meaning buyers, sellers, investors, for me, my clients are my brokers here in the office. The second you start feeling like you're compromising on client experience, you should have hired more support.
Yes. So it's hard to scale if you're not willing to invest in support.
You absolutely have to invest in the support. And so it's very intentional. Just as any business that's growing, you have to always evaluate what the highest and best use of your time is.
Yep.
And then surround yourself with great people. And honestly, I love hiring people that are smarter than me. I love hiring people that challenge me.
Yep.
I am not one that thinks I know the right way all the time. I always want to be learning something new and empowering my people around me to grow and develop and give them responsibilities to take on initiatives that maybe will give us opportunities to grow going forward. But I really look at it and I think, okay, real estate offices are their own version of an ecosystem. You have new to the business brokers who need training, coaching, support, positive environment, engagement from everybody. But they also need the office to have listings and activity and people that are hustling and working, and they see modeling the behavior that they eventually want to get to. They need those listings to host open houses. They need those listings just to drive activity as a whole for the office. Experienced brokers, whatever level of experience, they need new to the business brokers to help support some of the business that they're doing, to host those open houses, to kind of show that curiosity and even teach experienced brokers new ways of doing things. And that feeds into the entire culture. It's like one giant blender, right? Everybody needs each other, but we need to make sure we're always refreshing all of the different levels. And so as I'm approaching these different conversations and I think about the different layers of support that we need as an office, I'm always very aware of that part of it. I never want myself to be outside looking in thinking, I don't have the relationships anymore, I don't know what's going on. I always want to be close enough to what's going on with each individual broker. But clearly, as we've scaled up to almost 200 brokers, I can't do that every single day. And so I'm lucky enough to have Hunter Andre, who's our director of broker development, and he spends a lot of time on the group training side, but also a lot of one-on-one coaching. And we have very different styles, and the brokers love that.
Yeah.
Somebody might meet with me, and I have some ideas on doing something. Then they meet with Hunter, and he has a different take on something, and both can be right, and that's okay. And then you also think about operational side of things too, and that's where I think oftentimes people, as they're growing or developing, again, from the broker side over the brokerage side, your sales get in front of your operations, and then you start compromising on what the experience is, so then your sales decline because your operations couldn't support that level of production.
Yes. And
that's where Diana Duvall is a superstar. She's been with Baird & Warner. She always says, just tell me to say 30 plus years. She's held a lot of different roles, but she manages our A-plus staff. She keeps everything in line, and she honestly insulates me from a lot of that fun stuff too.
Yeah, and so what I notice about your office is the taste of the food is always the same. You know what I mean? You have a lot of consistency, and it's really, really an art to grow and be consistent.
Yes.
And so bravo, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, Dave, I just want to say thank you for the time here. You're truly one of the great real estate professionals. I know you probably don't see yourself as that. You see yourself as just, you know, we tend to get imposter. You're just getting started, so
I appreciate it.
congratulations.
No, thank you so much, and again, thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yep.